Have you ever wondered why, despite all your conscious efforts, it seems your heart insists on choosing the wrong person every time, as if there were an invisible force pulling you into relationships that, deep down, you know won't do you any good? This seemingly endless cycle may not be just bad luck or unconscious repetition. It could be deeply rooted in hidden aspects of your psyche. According to Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the love we feel or think we feel is often a reflection of an inner quest we don't fully understand. Intense but dysfunctional attractions can be important clues that something within us is trying to emerge, heal, or integrate. Get ready to embark on a deep journey where your romantic choices reveal more about who you are than about who you choose. Leave a comment. I'm ready to know myself through my relationships. Jung's analytical psychology invites us to view our relationships as mirrors of the soul. When we're constantly drawn to people who hurt us, frustrate us, or make us feel invisible, Jung doesn't see coincidence or bad luck. He proposes something deeper. These repeated encounters are symbolic manifestations of unconscious contents that demand recognition and integration. One of the central concepts here is projection. When we project unacknowledged aspects of ourselves onto another person, such as the need for control, emotional dependency, or the desire to be rescued, we don't see the other as they truly are, but as a screen on which our own gaps are drawn. Often, we unconsciously choose partners who embody our shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny or repress. Another essential point is the process of individuation, the path to becoming who we truly are. Along this journey, relationships emerge as symbolic tests and transformative experiences. Each wrong partner is not merely a mistake, they are a key, an invitation to self-knowledge. Additionally, Jung speaks of the anima and animus, the archetypal representations of the feminine and masculine within each of us. Our attraction to certain types of people may reflect imbalances in these inner archetypes, leading us to seek in the other what we have not found within ourselves. So if you find yourself repeating the same romantic patterns, perhaps it's time to look less outward and more inward. The answers lie not in changing your partner, but in transforming your consciousness. When someone attracts us almost magnetically, as if an irresistible force is connecting two worlds, we rarely stop to consider that this attraction may have little to do with them and much more to do with what we project onto them. Jung described projection as a natural and inevitable mechanism of the psyche, especially in romantic relationships. According to him, we project our unconscious contents, desires, fears, traumas, and idealizations onto the other person, which means we're actually seeing more of ourselves than of their reality. At the beginning of a relationship, this projection is often intense. We attribute almost mythical qualities to the other, seeing in them what we deeply long to see: absolute understanding, emotional security, unconditional passion. But over time, the projected image begins to crumble, and the other person's true self emerges, often in stark contrast to what we had idealized. At that moment, we feel frustration, hurt, and confusion, as if they had changed. But the truth is, they simply stopped sustaining the projection we placed upon them. In cases where we repeatedly choose problematic, emotionally unavailable, or abusive partners, projection acts as a mirror of our wounded inner world. We are drawn to those who symbolically represent aspects we have yet to recognize or heal within ourselves. For example, someone who felt rejected by parental figures in childhood may end up attracted to partners who reinforce that same sense of rejection. The repetition is not conscious, but it is powerful. The psyche seeks, through the other, a way to relive the pain in the unconscious hope that this time, things will turn out differently. Projection can also function as a shield. By projecting romantic ideals onto someone else, we avoid looking inward and confronting the complexity of our emotional history. It is easier to believe that the other person is the problem, that they never live up to expectations, than to recognize that our choice patterns reveal far more about our internal state than about our partner's shortcomings. Jung teaches us that the first step to breaking this cycle is awareness. Recognizing that what irrationally attracts us is often laden with unconscious projections is essential for transforming our relationships. This doesn't mean eliminating projection altogether. It is part of the human experience, but rather becoming conscious of it and learning to distinguish it from the other's reality. This discernment allows us to build more authentic relationships that are less based on unconscious fantasies. When we begin to withdraw projections, we may experience a sense of emptiness or disillusionment. That's natural. After all, we are disconnecting from the idealized image we created, which can provoke a crisis. Yet it is precisely in this void that a true relationship can begin to emerge, no longer based on filling an internal void, but on a more genuine connection between two whole individuals. Understanding projection as the root of unconscious attraction does not mean blaming ourselves or others, but rather using this insight as an opportunity for psychological growth. Every person who intensely attracts us may be revealing something about our own unconscious. The question to ask is not just, why does this person attract me, but what in me is being reflected in them? True love begins when we can see the other as they are, not as we wish them to be. And to do that, we must first see ourselves with the same clarity. For Jung, the shadow represents all the parts of ourselves that have been rejected, denied, or repressed throughout life. It is what we don't want to be, don't accept feeling, or were taught to hide. This invisible part of the psyche does not disappear. It merely lies hidden, waiting for opportunities to manifest. One of the domains where the shadow operates most forcefully is in relationships. When we ask ourselves why we always get involved with the same type of person, someone who hurts us, abandons us, or manipulates us, the answer may lie in the shadow. The repetition of relational patterns is not a mere accident or an unfortunate coincidence. It is often the unconscious trying to bring us face to face with those hidden parts. Every painful relationship, every repeated cycle, is a symbolic message that something within us needs to be recognized and integrated. The shadow is not composed solely of negative contents like anger, envy, or fear. It also harbors repressed potentials, strength, autonomy, desire, creativity. Often we choose partners who express what we have denied in ourselves. For instance, someone who is overly submissive may fall in love with authoritarian individuals, not because they enjoy being dominated, but because their own assertiveness has been suppressed. The attraction in this case is an unconscious impulse toward what needs to be recovered within oneself. On the other hand, there are situations where the shadow manifests as self-sabotage. People who deep down feel unworthy of love end up seeking partners who confirm that feeling. Unconsciously, they choose relationships that reproduce abandonment, disdain, or insecurity carried since childhood. By repeating this pattern, the psyche is not punishing us. It is trying to wake us up to the original wound. Jung asserted that true emotional freedom is only possible when we confront and integrate the shadow. This requires courage, because it means facing parts of ourselves that were excluded, often by traumas, cultural repression, or family demands. The pain we feel when we realize we're trapped in a repeating cycle marks the beginning of this integration process. It is the moment when we stop blaming the other and start asking ourselves, what within me needs to be transformed? Integrating the shadow also allows us to move out of the victim role in relationships. As long as we remain blind to our unconscious repetitions, we remain at their mercy. But by acknowledging that certain romantic choices reflect unresolved aspects of our own being, we gain autonomy. We become capable of choosing consciously rather than merely reacting to internal impulses. Another important aspect is the role of pain as a catalyst. The relationships that hurt us the most are often the ones that reveal us the most. Not because we need to suffer to evolve, but because emotional pain exposes internal contradictions that were dormant. When someone rejects us, for example, we confront our fear of being unloved, and if we pay attention, this leads us to explore where that fear originated, how it was formed, and what it tells us about our own self-image. Repetition then stops being a punishment and becomes an invitation. Each wrong partner carries, on a symbolic level, a piece of our shadow. And the more conscious we become of this, the closer we come to the possibility of transformation. Emotional liberation comes, not when we find the right person, but when we stop looking in the other for what is still split within us. Facing the shadow doesn't mean becoming perfect or conflict-free. It simply and profoundly means becoming whole. And only when we become whole can we relate in a true way, free from the unconscious need to fill voids or heal old wounds through the other. Within Jungian theory, one of the most profound and revealing concepts when it comes to romantic relationships is that of the anima and animus. Jung observed that, regardless of biological sex, we all carry within us a psychic component of the opposite sex. In men, this unconscious aspect is the anima, the personification of the inner feminine. In women, it is the animus, the personification of the inner masculine. These archetypes are not merely cultural or social symbols. They are living forces that shape our affections, our images of love, and our partner choices. Much of the intense attraction we feel for certain people is linked to projecting the anima or animus. We project onto the other an unconscious, idealized image of what we desire and seek in ourselves, but have not yet integrated. Therefore, we often feel magnetically drawn to someone who objectively does not match us, or even causes us suffering. The other becomes the incarnation of what our psyche longs for to become complete. When the anima is projected, she appears as the ideal woman, sensitive, profound, intuitive, capable of healing and nurturing. When the animus is projected, he manifests as the ideal man, strong, protective, wise, decisive, and courageous. But these images are fantasies, fueled by early experiences with parental figures, cultural myths, and everything we repressed during psychic formation. When the partner's reality does not match the projection, disillusionment, frustration, and often conflict arise. The ideal collapses, and we face the real person, often unknown or even incompatible. The central problem is not loving, but not perceiving that part of what we call love is actually a symbolic search for inner completeness. When we fail to integrate the anima or animus, we compulsively seek them outside ourselves, which traps us in relationships filled with more expectation than presence, more fantasy than reality. Integrating our inner feminine and masculine is one of the most important pillars of the individuation process. This means that to become whole beings, we must reconcile with these internal energies. For men, integrating the anima involves opening up to the emotional world, vulnerability, intuition, and receptivity. For women, integrating the animus means developing assertiveness, critical thinking, capacity for action, and inner structure. When these forces are recognized within us, we stop seeking them compulsively in the other. Without this integration, relationships become stages of imbalance. A man who projects his anima tends to idealize and then devalue his partner. A woman who projects her animus may feel dominated by critical, rigid, masculine figures within herself, or attract partners who reinforce that rigidity. In both cases, the relationship is not between two whole individuals, but between unconscious projections trying to complete a psychic puzzle. Recognizing the role of the anima and animus helps us break the illusion that the other is responsible for completing us. Instead, we come to understand love as a path of mutual growth, where the relationship ceases to be a mirror of lack and becomes a space for conscious integration. This doesn't mean we will stop loving passionately or that our passions will vanish. It simply means we will stop being victims of them. The energy that once scattered in expectations and frustrations will be channeled into a more mature bond, where love is not a reflection of deficiency, but an expression of wholeness. When we become intimate with our inner feminine and masculine forces, we gain the freedom to choose whom to relate to. Attraction ceases to be compulsive and becomes a conscious affinity. The other ceases to be a lifeline and becomes a companion on the journey. It is at this point that love stops being a game of projections and finally becomes a real possibility of union. The relentless pursuit of the ideal partner is one of the most persistent myths of modern life. Fueled by movies, novels, social media, and cultural expectations, this fantasy leads us to believe there is a perfect person, tailor-made to fill our emotional gaps. However, according to Jung, this romantic ideal often becomes an obstacle to true psychic growth. Instead of connecting with who we really are, we project our longing for completeness onto the other and remain trapped in a cycle of disillusionment, frustration, and repetition. The individuation process, as Jung defined it, is the path to becoming what one essentially is. It is a long, solitary, and profoundly transformative journey in which we shed social masks, inherited conditioning, and unconscious projections. Along this path, we learn to integrate opposites within us, light and shadow, reason and emotion, masculine and feminine, until we become whole. And this wholeness radically changes the way we relate. As long as we remain unconscious of who we are, the search for the ideal partner is actually an escape from ourselves. The desire to be rescued, loved unconditionally, or validated by another person reveals a disconnection from our own inner center. Emotional neediness, when unrecognized and unaddressed, disguises itself as romance and ends up projecting onto the other an impossible mission. to complete us. And when the partner inevitably fails at this, because no human being can, we feel betrayed, abandoned, or rejected. Individuation, however, does not deny love. On the contrary, it deepens our capacity to love truly. By acknowledging our own voids, wounds, and potentialities, we stop asking the other to heal what is ours to heal. Instead of seeking a perfect match, we begin to attract and connect with people who are also on the path of consciousness. The relationship becomes an encounter between wholes, not halves. This shift in perspective is radical. Love ceases to be a place of dependence and becomes a space of expansion. Instead of being pulled by unconscious forces that lead us to repeat painful patterns, we start choosing with clarity, presence, and truth. Attraction does not disappear, but it transforms. From blind compulsion into a call of the soul. We feel affinity, admiration, and desire without losing touch with who we are. It is common that at the outset of the individuation process, we experience a kind of existential loneliness. After all, we are letting go of the illusion that someone will come to complete us. This symbolic mourning for the ideal soulmate is necessary. It makes room for a more real, more human love, where imperfections are embraced and the bond is built day by day, not on fantasy. The end of the pursuit of the ideal partner is not the end of love, but the beginning of conscious love. In it, the relationship stops being a battlefield of frustrated expectations and becomes fertile ground for mutual growth. We begin to see the other as they are, not as we want them to be. And more importantly, we see ourselves with greater clarity as well. Individuation does not demand celibacy, isolation, or the abandonment of relationships. It demands only truth. It requires that we cease using love as anesthesia for wounds that need to be felt, and that we learn to love ourselves enough not to lose ourselves in the other. When this inner movement takes place, repetitive patterns lose their power. What once attracted us intensely and hurt us with the same intensity no longer holds the same sway. Because now we know what lies behind the attraction. We know our shadows, our projections, our unconscious desires, and in knowing, we cease to be dominated by them. In this new state of consciousness, romantic choice ceases to be a desperate search for completeness and becomes a celebration of the encounter. An encounter between two beings who walk not to merge, but to accompany each other. And this is perhaps the fullest, most real way to love. Reaching the end of this dive is actually just the beginning of a much deeper journey, the journey back to oneself. If you recognize that you always attract the wrong people, you may already have realized that the answer does not lie in changing the type of partner, but in transforming how you relate to your own psyche. Jung showed us that love is not merely emotion or instinct. It is a symbolic field where our shadows, projections, and archetypes come to life. Understanding projection, integrating the shadow, reconciling with our inner feminine and masculine aspects, and above all, following the path of individuation are essential steps to break the cycle of repetition. In the end, the right partner is not the one who comes to fill what's missing, but the one who reflects the wholeness we are already building within ourselves. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now and activate notifications. Also watch the video appearing on your screen to deepen your journey of self-knowledge. Remember, understanding your romantic choices is an act of courage, and courage is the first step toward true transformation.